Hello, this is Sam again, and I'm here to bring you another tutorial. Today's tutorial will be covering the process that I use for editing a single exposure photo. So we'll be covering this in Lightroom Classic, so let's get right into that. So first of all, you have to capture an image like this, so hopefully some of my other videos might help you uh, cover that. Go out, and for this particular shot it was very simple. Just took a tripod in my camera, and I believe this is a 13-second exposure. The settings you can see up here are ISO 3200 and aperture is 1.4. It's a shot with the Sony 24 millimeter GM lens. This, you can tell this is an astro-modified camera because the color in this image is a little bit reddish. Yes, as a consequence of that, it captures like not only the red, green, blue range of visible light, but it also captures additional hydrogen alpha exposure, which is highlighted in these nebulas here. I believe that is the Trifid Nebula, but I'll have to double check that. But yeah, so you can see these uh, nebulosity in the sky, and we'll go over how to correct the color. And color grading really is important with any camera capture, not just with an astro-modified camera, but it's a little bit like more involved to cover it with this, so we'll go into those details. So we will start out by making a few small changes to the default settings that come with the Lightroom Classic. So when you import your image, you'll come to the detail down here, and the detail does sharpening and color noise reduction by default, and the sharpening is actually not great on night photos. So if we remove the sharpening, you can see that the details are blended together better. And the color noise reduction, we do actually want that. Usually for most of my images, 25 value here is good. The default settings get me reasonably good results. You can play with detail and smoothness if you want to change those. You may get better results. You also may want to increase the color noise and also the luminous noise, depending on how much, what ISO your camera is shooting and what your capabilities of your camera are. For mine, I can easily shoot an image like this at 3200 and have a really pretty clean image here. So I might increase the luminous noise to usually not more than 15 unless the image is really looking grainy. So that's the detail adjustment, and if you want to zoom in, you can enable disable. You can see how it really smooths out the background. And though any smoothing like this is going to lose a little bit of detail in the Milky Way, but with some of the other edits we'll do, I think we can bring back that contrast and make it look good even with the smooth detail. All right, and the next thing that I like to cover before I get to actually editing the contrast and colors is the lens correction. So usually you want to correct this here. Let's actually zoom out so you can see the full thing. So you can see there's vignetting. All lenses have some amount of vignetting, some are more than others. So you want to enable profile corrections, and you can see that the corner is brightened up really nicely. And you may want to remove chromatic aberrations. It may or may not make a difference. So a chromatic aberration basically is just a bright object that's like against a dark object, and it can get fringed color. So I don't see a whole lot of that in this image, so it's probably not going to change a whole lot. But like if you were having like a picture of the moon, for example, would be like a dark background and a really bright object, you frequently get colors of like bluish, purplish, or like sometimes an orangish color around the edge of the moon. Depending on your color grading, then you can make corrections to that, sometimes using this chromatic aberration or using the manual adjustments here. So now that we have this image with the basic detail corrected and the lens corrections, next I like to get the colors right. So this image is a little bit darker than I want it to be. So I'm going to brighten it just a little bit so I can see the colors in the foreground. Maybe I'll just brighten the shadows for that for right now. There we go. So then the sky's not getting too blown out. So we'll start with that. And then I actually like to blow out the vibrance and the saturation. We won't keep it like that, but it's helpful for the color grading. So when we are doing the extremes like this, right, we need to make sure that we are creating a proper white point is one of the easiest ways to do this. So by blowing out the saturation and the vibrance, you can see the extremes in the image. So before I make any adjustments here, all right, with the defaults, you can see there's a lot of reds. So right, it seems the sky seems to be very red. So we'll start with a purple to a green tint adjustment here. And we'll bring that down until it's looking somewhat reasonable. But we look correspondingly, now that we've made that adjustment, the sky looks really, really yellow. So we'll probably want to make a temperature adjustment to bring that all the way down. But right, if we bring it all the way down, right, everything turns green. So we definitely don't want our sky to be green. So then we have a few options. We can turn the blues all the way down and then adjust the tint and see what it looks like. If we can bring that up to look reasonable, maybe that'll work. Like something like this. And what we want to do is we want to look at our Milky Way here and see if we're getting natural colors in it. Obviously, right, there might be some areas of the image that are really poorly color graded at this point, but like we're just looking at some area of the photo that's not really affected by clouds or light pollution or all these other things, and just see do the colors here look reasonable. So this is actually not looking too bad. So let's see what it looks like when we dial back both the saturation and vibrance. So you might be wondering how I would choose my final saturation and vibrance. That's totally based on personal preference. So for me, like some images, I like to make them really saturated. Other images, like a more natural look. So right now, the colors of the sand actually look really good based off of those adjustments. You can see there's the Milky Way here. This actually looks pretty good as well. And you can see that we are still getting some saturation pop from these nebulas, but the whole image is not looking purplish or red anymore. And yeah, I think this looks actually pretty good. You can see there's like a light pollution dome over here, probably from, this is the Great Indies National Park, probably from Alimosa or one of the other cities that's nearby there. There's one other city that's nearby, but I think this is facing towards Alimosa. So you can see kind of the light pollution dome, and that's kind of giving us a little bit of weird lighting here. I don't know, if you want, you could probably try to do corrections here. Maybe this guy looks a little bit green, but like I think this looks okay to me. So now that we have the colors in the place where I'm pretty happy with it, we can start to edit the rest of the details in the image. So if you go through my course on YouTube that covers this, I go into great depth of like the different options for editing contrast and colors in Lightroom here, Lightroom Classic, and then also the web version of this. So like I think there are many options, but for me, most of the time, with especially with single images like this, I can quickly just do a temperature adjustment, tint adjustment. My more complex images, I usually edit those in Photoshop, so we'll probably do a video on that at some point later on. The process there is more complex, but for these, I like to keep it really simple. Now that we have this setup done here, right, we have a few different options for editing, right? So we can look at this image and say, do we like the lighting of the image? This image too bright, obviously. Look at this, we can make it look like a daytime image. You can see all the sand. We can bring it down here. I think that's probably about where we want to bring the total exposure to at maximum. So we can try to maybe touch up this. Actually, maybe we'll keep the shadows where they are. And we can turn the highlights down here like this a little bit. This is really just like, do you like the way it looks type of deal, right? Like, there's not like a scientific explanation where you should turn your highlights this far down, your exposure this far up. But yeah, just the one thing to keep in mind is, like, if you're adjusting these sliders, they'll contradict each other, right? So if I increase the exposure, both the whole image is brightened, but then I decrease the highlights, so I'm counteracting the exposure. So you probably want to avoid doing things where you increase the exposure but decrease both the highlights and the shadows, right? Because then you're basically directly counteracting the exposure change you just made, right? So like, you want to be careful about doing that. But if you do exposure increase, so you're increasing both the shadows and the highlights, but then you think the highlights are too bright and you bring that down, you can get a pretty it's a pretty reasonable approach for modifying it, right? Obviously, the other way to do that would just be to drop the highlights and bring up the shadows. So, right, let's do that right now. So if I want to create a similar effect, I can drop the highlights less, increase the shadows more, right? And I'm in a very similar state to where I was by just increasing the exposure and significantly decreasing the highlights. So there's multiple ways to create the same contrasting effect. So this is looking pretty reasonable. It looks pretty pleasant to view. And then we have other types of contrast edits we can make. So there's a texture, clarity, the dehaze. So again, this is very image dependent. It depends on like what kind of effect you're going for. If you add a lot of dehaze, it's going to really change the contrast of your sky. And if there's like, this image has a good amount of like clouds and then probably high clouds or haze, smoke. I don't know exactly what it was on this particular night above the clouds. So the dehaze is going to have a really significant impact on that. So in an image like this, I would go really light on the dehaze, not go too hard, because you're going to start getting an unnatural look where you get a really hard cutoff between the clouds and then the rest of the sky. You won't get a smooth transition. So then if you want to really enhance the details of the Milky Way, the clarity slider is a good way to do that. So you can see if I decrease the clarity, right, everything becomes smoothed out and it's almost like the sky is foggy, becomes foggy. If I increase the clarity, it increases the detail in the sky. And then if you want to really work on the adjustments and see if you're like messing up the detail, you can like really zoom into it. And obviously, based on the resolution of your camera sensor, you will be able to zoom in and see more or less detail. But for me, I'm able to zoom in this far, and that still looks pretty good. And then if we just play with the texture slider, you can see what that does to the image, right? So if you reduce the texture, it kind of smooths it out. It's similar to reducing the clarity, but not to the same extent of like clouding the sky completely. But if we want to increase this all the way, you can see it starts looking unnaturally almost grainy. So you want to really avoid that. In many cases, you want to avoid the extremes, but not always. There are certainly cases where the extremes work well. So I feel like since the sky in this image is cloudy, we're getting a good amount of contrast, I think, from the clarity here. I'm going to reduce the texture to allow the natural like blend of this sky to look good, right? If I add too much texture here, right, it almost looks like the detail is there, but then it's not supposed to be there because there should be some amount of clouds in front of the Milky Way. So it almost looks unnatural to me. So I feel like we'll reduce the texture here to give it a more soft, natural look. So I'm liking how that's looking so far. there's still a few things I'm not sure if I like so much. So there's a really dark spot here in the middle where, like, if we just play with the exposure, we can definitely bring out detail there. So the question is, how do we want to bring out that detail? So we can go through some more advanced editing settings. So for some of you, this might be a perfectly good image. Like it's probably almost as good as some of the individual shot images that I post on my social. So this is not a bad image, but I think we can make it better. So there's a few things. One is this dark spot. There's also planes flying through the sky. We can try to remove the planes from the image, and we'll try to improve the focus point of the image, maybe we'll call it. So basically, when you look at this image, where do your eyes go to in the image? So we can use the masking feature for that. So this is like probably one of my favorite features of the Lightroom Classic. So I can just create a radial gradient. So basically, what it'll do is it'll apply a filter on this on the image itself. So let's say I want the focus to be into the Milky Way right there. So that means I want everything in there to be like brighter and to stand out more, right? So there's a few ways I can do this. I can like just increase the exposure, right? If I do that, like you can see the effect that it's having. Obviously that's not natural, so we're gonna want to scale it back, and we may actually just want to increase the highlights or something, or the shadows. Basically, this is very similar to adding some form of vignetting, except we're doing this to a very specific part of the image. So you really don't want to go like really strong on this. Another way you can do this is you can actually invert your mask and darken the rest of the image. So it'll naturally just bring the focus into the area that you have selected, like this, right? And so you can see how all the image is dark now, and it just focuses right on that one area. So like that's another way to do it. Let's try to lighten this just a little bit here, because I want to really focus here in the Milky Way. All right, so let's do that. And then, like I said, I'm also still not happy with this dark area here. So let's do a brush filter here. Not sure if I like the way that's turning out. Let's delete that, and let's do a radial gradient, because that'll give us a nice clean feathering. So maybe I should probably mention the feathering feature. So you can see there's two concentric circles or ovals here. So the inner one is where the filter applies more strongly, and then as you go between that circle and the outer circle, it's going to fade out the effect of the mask here. So that'll mean that like the full effect of the mask will happen in the middle, and as you go towards the outside, it becomes less of an effect. So let's do. So I want to bring out the details without making it look unnatural. So let's see. Does that look unnatural now? It's possible it looks a little bit unnatural. All right, so let's see if we can Can I turn it off here? I don't know. Let's see. I don't see a way to actually turn the mask on and off. Well, we can see if we can. All right, it doesn't look like there is an easy way for me to do this. I'm used to the camera raw, where I can enable and disable like basically anything I want to. Here it does not directly look. Oh, I guess I can do this. There we go. So you can kind of see I disable it, it's darker. When I enable it, it brightens up. And let's see, if we zoom out here and look, I feel like I can't really tell that I've edited it, but I feel like it doesn't look as black and unnatural as it was before. So it still looks dark. You can see the good contrast, but I think that's better than having it completely black or look completely black. At least it looked like it to me. Maybe it looks different on your screen. I don't know. But yeah, so this is looking pretty good now. And yeah, so the other thing I wanted to quickly cover is how you might try to remove these planes. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planes it looks like, and then it looks like there's a satellite in the middle of the Milky Way. There's another one up there too. And there's probably another one here, but that one's so not visible that I don't think I'm gonna even bother with it. I actually think there's 2 or 3 more there if you really look. But yeah, if you're really picky, you could remove all of those. But just to show you how you would do that, let's go over to, I don't know why it's giving me, yeah, I know how to use this. So there's different types of tools here. So there's, this first one is the eraser tool, and then there's the healing tool and the clone stamp tool. So I believe the eraser tool uses generative AI to remove the details here. So basically, it'll look at your image and the pixels around it and generate something new. The healing tool, what it does is it selects a different part of the image and then blends it with the new spot, and it takes into account color and other factors to help the blend look better. The clone stamp tool is a little bit more primitive than the healing tool, where it picks a very specific part of the image and it directly blends it without taking other factors like the colors and stuff into account. So those are the 3 options. So we can try them to see if one of them does a better job here. So if we click here and then we hold shift key down and click on the other side, we'll see that it's covered the whole plane trail here. If we click remove, it will run the AI here, and you can see that it's completely invisible now. Now you may be wondering or concerned that like maybe this is not quite accurate. And you're probably right with that, because the AI tool is not going to go look at the star map in some planetary map or something and then come and replace the stars. So you'll notice that you probably can't see this, and when you're looking at the image, you probably won't notice that the stars are a little bit different. So right, like especially when there's no super bright stars, like the area that we just masked. But like in general, like if you're doing this really close to say the nebula here, right, that would not be a good idea, right, because you're not going to get the real look of it, and it'll be very obvious. Or if you pick a really bright star, like one of the stars in Rophiuchi over here, if you cover one of those stars and the AI replaces it, that would be also not a great idea, because then you would lose like relevant details to the image. But some of these smaller stars, in my opinion, that's not relevant details. If you're concerned about that and you want to remove your stars accurately and keep everything exactly perfect, then you can take multiple exposures and stack them and blend them together and remove the planes that way, and then you'll have a perfectly valid image of the exact nice guy. But I think if you're careful with images like this, it can be a perfectly reasonable approach to just use the AI generation or the clone stamp tool to remove the stars, even if it's not quite perfect. So you can. So what I do is I use the shift click on here, so to just so you know what I'm doing. So I take my mouse pointer on one side, I click, and then I go to the other end of the trail, and then I shift click to select the whole thing. And so this time, instead of using the AI tool, I use the healing tool, And as you can see, it picked a different part of the image that it thinks is a similar color and star pattern, and it'll blend well. And so it removed that particular trail. You can see it's done a relatively good job. I think with this one I can see a little bit of a marking there from where it was. Let's see if these details here are part of it, which I think they are. Yes. So I actually think I like the result of the AI tool better. I think it did a better job than the healing tool did here. So if we delete this with the delete key, then we can bring it back and we can try the clone stamp tool to see how that one works. And so so we can make this mask smaller. So I do that by hitting the square bracket key. Like the left square bracket is make it smaller, the right square bracket will make it larger. I believe this will work on both Windows and Mac. So if we click here and we click here, so this is the clone stamp tool, so it is less intelligent than the healing tool. It picked a different part of the image, and you can see that this is probably the worst result of all, because I can obviously see what it masked in. So in order to increase decrease the likelihood of me being able to tell, let's see if we can select this here. There we go. We're back. So I do not necessarily like the results of this, so I changed the feathering of it. So let's see if changing the feathering actually made a difference. It doesn't look like it made a difference here. Let's see if we can delete this. We will delete it all together. And then we want the size to be pretty small. Feathering, let's do 80% feathering, and we'll make the width of this like 9. I want to see if we can get this to work here. So I'll click on the left side of this, I'll hold the shift key down, click on the other end, and that clearly did not cover the whole plane trail. So if you see I move it around, the width of my clone stamp was not big enough, so we're going to increase the size. You can either do that let's do 12 by dragging it over here in the slider, or you can use the square bracket keys like I was explaining before. Both work just fine. So this is frozen right now. It seems like there is some sort of bug. There we go. Now it's back. I'm slightly confused why it keeps freezing up. Alright, so let's do that. Alright, still it's a little bit off. Can I increase the size without? Yeah, no, that's not look like it. Alright, so let's just do like something really big. Let's do like 20, so we can almost certainly cover the whole thing. Alright. And for some reason I've lost my ability to use the feature again. There we go. Alright, so let's start here, and we'll mask to here, and I feel like this is still not quite there. Alright, I think the feathering is too big. Let's do 50% feather. And then hopefully this attempt will be the last one. And then let's see if we can bring back my ability to use the feature. No! I actually don't know why Lightroom is doing this. I'm wondering if if my computer is having trouble processing it because I'm recording the video at the same time as I'm running this, because I haven't really seen this issue before. Alright, there we go. So now with the feathering, and this looks a lot better, right? So we don't see the whole outline of the clone anymore, but it's still not amazing. And I can still see where it replaced. So let's go back and see if uh, it's really frozen again. See if we can remove the this again. Let's try the AI version of the remove because that seemed to work really well for the first one we tried. Hopefully we'll get good results. And then we'll do this. And then I have to click remove. This will take a second to analyze the image, remove this plane. And you can see, I believe this is probably the best result actually. It's actually still not perfect though. I can still see it. So this one did not work nearly as well as the first one that removed. But yeah, that's how you play with this, and you can remove the plants from your image. So if we quickly go over here and see if we can move these other planes. I'm gonna reduce my can I do 2 at a time or no? I can. I'm gonna do all 3 of those at once. And I'm gonna go like remove, and then hopefully all the planes will be gone. Cool. And again, right, I'm just using a shift click to go through the lines of the planes. So no satellites are still there, but when you zoom out, you see the Milky Way image here, and you see no obvious planes, at least from the size of the image that you would post to Instagram. And like I said, you won't be able to tell that mass it out. And so even though the planes might not be lines where planes where AI generated might not be natural, like no one's probably going to notice. So yeah, so this is a pretty good looking image now. I think probably I'd be happy with this result. I mean, again, there's different options. Maybe you might think the foreground is too dark, which like we could definitely brighten the foreground a little bit. Like maybe just increase the darks. That'd be one thing we can do. Maybe just a little bit. So if people have their screens darker on their phones, right, like the bottom of the image isn't dark, the corners are pretty dark. That's another consideration you might want to make. One other thing you could do is you could play with the sky. You could just select the sky. So like I said, these masking features in Lightroom Classic are amazing. So I don't know if I want to make too many adjustments to sky, but one thing that I like, one way to just increase the contrast would just be to bring down the darks. So you can see the sky is relatively bright as we start here, and then if I just bring the blacks down, I can create a darker image. You can do the same thing with shadows. You'll have a much lesser effect. That's a softer effect even at its most extreme. So if you want more contrast, I would say just pull the blacks down a little bit, right? Obviously you don't want to do too much, or else you start getting the vignetting in the corners, like it becomes dark, and you end up with a really unnatural look. You lose the soft touch that like we added by adding the by reducing the texture of the image. But like I think if you just do a little bit, maybe like 24, 25 or something on the just of the sky here, you end up with a little bit more contrast in the dark dust in the middle of the galaxy here, and then a little bit on the refuge over here, which is not as prominent in an unstacked image like this one. But yeah, so those are the features I think I'll cover today. So we went from like not a pretty raw image coming out of the camera, and I believe this pretty good looking Milky Way result. So thanks for joining the tutorial today, and make sure you're subscribing so that you can catch the next video where we'll probably talk on other topics similar to this one. And if you're really committed to like learning astrophotography, I'm starting a community on School. That's SKOOL. The link will be in the description, and you can join my community there, where you can join live calls with me and just interact with the whole community and get all your questions answered. So thanks for watching today.